So welcome and thank you to everyone who volunteered to participate on the New Mix Programs Public Advisory Committee. This is our second PAC meeting. Later on in the presentation, we'll go through introductions. My name is Naomi Hodges. I am a consultant. I am doing the environmental portion of this program, and I will be facilitating these PAC meetings. I've asked before, but as everyone still continues to log on, I just ask that you put your names into the chat function of the Zoom and also add your organization there as well. As mentioned, this meeting is being recorded. If you choose to use your camera, just be aware of that. We are using Zoom for all of these meetings. So whether you're accessing this presentation from your cell phone, a desktop, laptop, all those Zoom functions should be accessible to you. As I asked before, we'll be using this chat function box. It will get a lot of use today during this presentation. Feel free to put your questions or comments into the chat box as well as we move through this presentation. And there will also be times where I'll ask you to unmute yourselves. If you have any questions during the conversational portion of the presentation, we'll have time to do that. Let's get started. So welcome back. Here's the agenda for today. We'll go through a review of our first PAC meeting. We'll also do a summary of our analysis needs and deficiency report. During that section, we'll have some interactive portions with you all where you can provide your input. And then after that, we'll go through the next steps. Okay, this is the New Mix leadership team. I'll pause here for a second to give everyone a chance to introduce themselves here. So, Neil?
Neil Patel, DOT, Principal Engineer.
Hi, Scott Roberts, DOT, I'm the Project Manager.
Good morning, everyone. John Dean, Connecticut DOT. I'm the project engineer.
Hi, everyone. Jacob Argiro, HNTB project manager.
David Schweitzer, HNTB deputy project manager.
And I'm Chris Fagan. I am HNTB's project engineer on the program.
Thank you. My name is Naomi Hodges. I've introduced myself before. I am the environmental lead on the project. We also have two guest speakers, and I'll ask them to introduce themselves right now. Dave?
Yes, hi. My name is Dave Gill. I'm a traffic engineer for HNTB.
Sure. Hi, I'm Katie Tice. I am the urban planning lead from HNTB.
So as presented in our first meeting, these are the organizations who have been invited to participate on the New Mix PAC. Those of you who are joining us from telephone, I'm just going to ask you to briefly introduce yourselves just because I can't see who's here. So let's see. I have a 203 number, and that is.
Hello, Martin Spring, Waterville Community Club.
Thank you, Martin. There is one other phone number I'm seeing.
Yeah, that's a 757-7479 number.
That's my number.
Okay.
Okay.
And we're looking at the 597-3452 number.
Hello, that's Tom Fitzgerald, Waterbury Fire Marshal. I'm on both the live feed so I can see the screen and on the phone so I could chime in if I have to.
Great, thank you.
Hi, this is Sharon Lewis, Connecticut Coalition for Environmental Justice, 860-595-8770.
Thank you, Sharon. Great, and if you haven't already done so, please continue to put your name and organization into the chat box function just so that we can track those of you who are joining us on this meeting today. And again, just want to thank you all for volunteering your time to participate on this New Mix PAC. This slide is also familiar to you. We presented this in our first PAC meeting. This is just a review over your roles and responsibilities as PAC members. We just want you to be participating. We want the conversation to be productive. We want to make sure that we are also familiarizing ourselves with the materials and also sharing the perspectives of your community and the discussions that we have during these meetings with your community as well. Provide your input, serve as that community link between us and the community. And also, we just really want these PAC meetings to be a respectful and collaborative space. So in an effort to make sure this is a positive experience for all participants, we just ask that we start our meetings and end our meetings on time. The meetings will be documented with a report of meeting. We just ask that everyone is courteous and respectful and considerate of all the opinions and perspectives, and also to try not to interrupt and speak over each other while we are speaking. This virtual space is kind of, complicated when we're trying to have these collaborative discussions. So we appreciate that you all continue to stay muted unless we ask you to unmute yourselves during those conversational portions of the presentation. And I will alert you all of when that's is appropriate. And then also, if you have any questions or comments while we're going through the presentation, you can always insert those comments into the chat box as well. So since our last meeting, you have been identifying those transportation-related goals and objectives on that input map, and also checking your email for any information on the New Mix program. On the other side, we have been obtaining those input from you all and the PAC members and the public, and also we've been taking that input and refining our purpose and need statement and other transportation-related goals and objectives. So these next few slides will be very familiar. I'll move through this really quickly. This will be a review of our first meeting. What is the New Mix program? So this New Mix program is a long-term planning study that's looking to find a solution on how to reconstruct the New Mix interchange. We are using the federally recognized PEL, or Planning and Environmental Linkages approach for the study in order to find the best solution for the Waterbury Mixed Master. We will be using this PEL approach to inform the subsequent NEPA process. This slide is also familiar. This figure depicts the anticipated steps in the full PEL process. As you can see, there are several steps that we have identified to making sure that this study is successful. Right now, we are in the developing of our purpose and need and transportation-related goals and objectives. And you can also see that there have been some ongoing research and study products that have been produced in order to get us to this, this point in time. During this presentation, we will be reviewing the data that we've collected in our analysis needs and deficiency report. And that was in this part right here. That first box, identify those transportation needs. And I'll actually get right into that right now. The analysis needs and deficiencies summary. So what is the analysis needs and deficiency report? This summarizes the details and results of the various studies that have been performed as part of Connecticut Department of Transportation's planning process for the New Mix program. These studies that are summarized in this report consist of data collection efforts and engineering analysis for transportation, community, and environmental context features within the project study area. These studies have been collectively performed to identify the existing transportation networks deficiencies and also to predict the future deficiencies. This report will serve as a source of information to develop the program's preliminary purpose and need statement as part of that PEL study process. That preliminary purpose and need statement will also be used in subsequent NEPA, the National Environmental Policy Act process that will follow that Pell study. This report is available for your review on the program website. After this meeting, I will send a link in the email where you'll be able to access this document. In the next upcoming sections, my colleagues will review with you a few of the determinations that resulted from this analysis needs and deficiency report. And that will include structural, geometric, traffic, multimodal, community, and environmental conditions. Before we get into it, these are just some commonly used terms. I did send out the PDF prior to this meeting, so if you have any questions on any of these terms while we're going through the presentation, because they are recurring, just flip back to this slide and you'll find it. Two of the terms that I did want to touch upon is system ramp and service ramp. So a system ramp is a roadway that connects a limited access highway to one another. That would be, I-84 eastbound as an example, and that ramp to connect to Route 8 northbound. Or you can say Route 8 southbound to connect to I-84 westbound. Those are examples of system ramps. And then a service ramp is a roadway that connects the local roadway network to the limited access highway. So those are what we colloquially call, those on and off ramps to access those highways systems. Okay, now I'm going to hand it off to my colleague, Chris, to get into the structural portion of the presentation.
Thanks, Naomi. So yes, this first section is going to be on structural deficiencies at the Mixmaster Interchange. These will be the existing structural deficiencies and anticipated future structural deficiencies. Whenever we say future during this presentation, what we're referring to is the New Mix program's future design year, which is 2045. You should all understand why we picked 2045 for the design year by the end of this section. So back to structures. First things first, I'm going to introduce some commonly used bridge terms just to help with everybody's understanding. We'll begin with that circular graphic on the left. These are the three main components of a bridge, and we're going to be working from the ground and moving up. First, you have the First, you have the substructure. That's the foundation of the bridge. On top of the substructure is the superstructure. That's what gets you over the crossed feature. And then on top of the superstructure is the deck. That's more or less what the vehicles are driving on when they cross the bridge. Decks are typically made out of reinforced concrete, and in Connecticut, we usually have a thin layer of pavement on top that we call a wearing surface. So these three main components of a bridge are regularly inspected for every structure on the national highway system, and their condition is rated on a numerical scale that ranges from 0 to 9. This rating scale is established by the National Bridge Inspection Standards, and it's what's shown here on the right. 0 to 4 is poor condition, that's red. 5 to 6 is fair condition, and that's what's being shown in yellow. And everything above a 7 is good condition, and that is green. In Connecticut, we also have a term called state of good repair. That's an umbrella term for all bridge components that are in fair or good condition. And it is where we set the bar for maintaining our bridge inventory in Connecticut. We don't want bridges that are in poor condition on the inventory for very long at all. Last thing we have on this slide in the lower left-hand corner is a definition that is structural redundancy. Structural redundancy is a best practice in bridge design that ensures that a bridge will stay standing if there is localized damage to a part of it. Structural redundancy is a good thing. So let's move to the next slide. So all that this is just a list of the analyses and evaluations that our study team performed to understand the structural deficiencies in the study area. We're going to be mostly focusing on physical condition in this presentation. That's what's related to the colored NBIS rating scale from the previous slide. If any of these other terms come up during that discussion, I'll try to give a short definition at that time. Let's move to the next slide. All right, so on the left-hand side of this slide is a nice photo from the interior of the interchange, what we call the core of the interchange. I think it's looking north. This photo does a really good job showing the complexity of this mixed master interchange, showing the multiple stacked levels of bridges. You can also see those main bridge components that I introduced you to previously: substructure, superstructure, and then if you look really hard, maybe you can see the underside of a concrete bridge deck. On the right-hand side is a timeline depicting the rehabilitations that have been performed on the mixed master. So all of this infrastructure was built in and around the 1960s, and you can see that within about 20 years of the initial construction, the first rehab was already occurring, and that's continued every 10 to 20 years through the present day. There's a rehab project going on now to improve the physical conditions of the mixed master interchange, and many of you are experiencing the effects of that daily. Periodic rehabilitations, they kind of come with the territory for structures that are exposed to the elements. As soon as they're built, they start deteriorating. It's just their nature. One thing that I'd like everybody to note is how frequently the bridge deck component shows up in these rehabs. Vehicular loadings and repeated winter applications of roadway salts put a lot of wear and tear on this bridge component, and that means that it requires more frequent rehabilitations. So that's all the intro matter. If we move to the next slide, I can get into some statistics from what we studied. So within our study area, there were 62 studied bridges with a combined bridge deck area that exceeded 1 million square feet. That's just a big number that's meant to impress everybody with the amount of bridges that are out there. Every statistic that follows from this point forward is going to be a pre-rehabilitation statistic. That is when our data collection was performed, and it's the best information that we have to share. So we did want to share it with you. However, just keep in mind that at the conclusion of the ongoing rehab project, some of these numbers will be out of date. So one last note, these are stats that are measured by deck area, not number of bridges. So the first one is structural deficiencies, and that's bridges that are in overall poor condition. At the time of our data collection, 60% of the structure, 60% of the bridges by deck area were structurally deficient or in poor condition. Now, classifying a bridge as structurally deficient does not mean that there's a safety issue. However, it does mean that the deficiencies are notable enough that they require maintenance, rehabilitation, or replacement. Hence why the rehab project is ongoing right now. Again, at the end of that rehab project, this is no longer going to be the case. These bridges will be brought up to a state of good repair, and they will remain that way for a time. The rehab project is a temporary measure to extend the service life of the interchange. Next stat, over 40% of the bridges measured by deck area were functionally obsolete. What this means is that the bridges were either too narrow or too low to the ground. Too narrow meaning that maybe they couldn't fit the required number of travel lanes or shoulder widths on top, or too low to the ground. The vertical clearance that they provided was not adequate for some vehicles to travel underneath them. This is something that's not typically corrected during a rehabilitation. It is something that we would look to address in our new mix reconstruction. Last statistic is about fracture critical bridges. 19% of the structures that are out there as measured by deck area are fracture critical bridges. Fracture critical is a term that is the opposite of structural redundancy. It means that the bridge contains members where it is very important to get up close and hands-on during an inspection to make sure that its condition is fair or in good condition. So this is a feature that we don't typically put in a modern bridge, and it is something that we would, again, look to correct in our future reconstruction of the interchange. So next slide, please. So what's shown here, this is just a graphical depiction of the physical bridge conditions at the core of the interchange, again, as they were observed during our data collection phase. So the 60% structural deficiencies from the previous slide, this is just shown in graphical form here. The thick red lines that are running east and west and north-south, those are the stacked I-84 and Route 8 bridges respectively. These bridges represent the lion's share of structural deficiencies within the study area, and improving their condition, that's the focus of the ongoing rehabilitation project. The current rehab project will restore these bridges to a state of good repair and extend their service life by approximately 25 years. That should keep the interchange going until 2045. And this is exactly why 2045 is our future design year for the new mixed reconstruction and this Pell study. So that's the end of the structural conditions overview portion of this presentation. I'm going to hand it off to David Schweitzer, and he's going to provide a summary of highway geometric deficiencies. So, David?
Thank you, Chris. All right, the geometric analysis section of the Analysis Needs and Deficiency Report looked at all the major roadways within our study limits. This includes I-84, Route 8, the system ramps, and the service ramps. 9 of the major criteria that we looked at are shown here on the slide, and these criteria were established through the ConnDOT Highway Design Manual and through AASHTO policies. Now, each of these major criteria are interrelated in that they can kind of feed off of each other, and the main purpose of these criteria is to provide efficient travel, that it has safer conditions, and meets driver expectancy. Of these criteria that we looked at are the design speed of the roadway, the travel lane and the shoulder widths, the horizontal alignment of the roadway, the vertical curvature, stopping sight distance, cross slopes of the roadway, the super elevation when it's in a horizontal curve, the vertical clearance with other structures, and then also the intersection sight distances. Now, how we broke this down, and we're not going to get into that here, I'm not going to show you, but when you look in the report itself, there are a bunch of matrices that will be in there, and they will break down each of the roadways, maybe possibly in different segments for each of these criteria, and it'll be rated on a scale of green being good, that everything met the criteria, yellow meaning it marginally passed within that segment of the roadway, and then also red where a piece of that roadway did not meet the criteria. So those are the major criteria that we look at. And if you look, when we break the roadways down as they show up here, and you will start to see the symbols come up if something did not meet or you had criteria that did not meet. So you can see we had a lot of deficiencies here with I-84, Route 8, and we built the system and the service ramps. Additionally to these major criteria, next slide, please. There were other graphs in there, and one such example here, a little bit busy, but just to get the point across, is this is showing where there are left-hand entrance or exit ramps. And then also you'll see on here, there are T's, which is showing where interchanges are spaced very closely, which allows for less merge, weave, and diverge distances. And these are all factors that can lead to speed differentials and conditions that aren't as safe. So this whole section looks at the geometric analysis within that report, and it's broken down by segments. And that's about as far as we want to get into it right here at this meeting. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, David Giel, who's going to walk us through the traffic analysis and then through the safety section of this report.
Thank you, David. We're going to provide a brief overview of the traffic analysis and safety, as David mentioned. First, when we begin looking at traffic characteristics for a project, we first need to define a study area. This graphic here shows the general extents of the study area along I-84 to include the interchange 17 on the west side, left side of this graphic at Chase Parkway, to the east at interchange 23. Additionally, along Route 8, we've included the northern extent of interchange 35, all the way to the south at interchange 30. We've included within this section 65 intersections which were evaluated, and we also collected data within this region of the study area. Along the highways, we collected data for a full day period during weekday as well as the weekend. At these 65 intersections, which include ramp termini as well as local intersections, we collected data for weekday AM and PM peak hours, as well as a Saturday selection at approximately 12 locations in the vicinity of the Brass Mill Shopping Center in downtown area. These graphs here show a 2016 continuous count station data representation of daily traffic along I-84 and Route 8 broken down by hour as a percentage. And this is a general look at the pattern of traffic that you likely experience every day as you travel through the area. On the left-hand side for I-84, you can note that in the eastbound direction, the soft purple color, there is a larger percentage of traffic you'll see in the PM peak, while in the westbound direction, that is shown as a higher percentage in the AM peak. And you'll note that this is actually collected west of the interchange. Depending where you are in the interchange, these patterns may change slightly. So if that is not in your recollection for the pattern, that would explain why it's to the west of the interchange. Along Route 8 on the right-hand side of the graphic, you'll see a similar pattern. This is collected north of the interchange. So Route 8 northbound exhibits a higher percentage of traffic in the afternoon, whereas Route 8 southbound exhibits a higher percentage of traffic in the AM peak hour during the weekday. This traffic data that we collected throughout the study area, it was used to refine a travel demand model, which is a statewide model used to reflect regional traffic and patterns related to employment, population, as well as land use, which is then simulated to filter through the highways onto the local street. And this creates a basis for projecting into the future 2045 build condition that Chris mentioned earlier. In the next slide, please. What we're seeing in these two graphics, on the left 2017, on the right 2045 projected conditions, you'll see expanded line widths throughout the area as well as color changes. And the colors are going to change from yellow, orange, red that you see here, which show increased congestion throughout the interchange. We just passed through the AM peak hour. We're looking at midday now, and we'll also get to a sustained congested peak in the afternoon in the 2045 conditions that you can see with all the expanded red regions. And you can see overnight, the congestion subsides. Next slide. The original design for the Mixed Master Interchange was projected with an approximate 100,000 vehicle capacity based on a 1975 build condition year. Today, we've far surpassed that. We experience approximately 190,000 vehicles. And under projected 2045 conditions, the growth is expected to continue to the tune of approximately 225,000 vehicles, far exceeding the interchange capacity. To understand the operational conditions along the highways as well as the intersections throughout the study area, we use several different tools, including simulation models, which you see on the left. Those models use simulated driver behavior to forecast and estimate traffic operations on very complex systems such as the weaving and merging of highway ramps that you see in the stack area on the top graphic. And you can also, on the right-hand side, see a snippet of a traffic analysis tool, which uses input based on the traffic information we collected to estimate traffic conditions based on industry accepted equations and formulas. This simulation here shows the VISIM software simulation of traffic conditions under future 2045 conditions under the critical area of I-84 eastbound between the Route 8 northbound system ramp and the exit 21 and 22 off ramp to the downtown area. You can see here, we are forecasting sustained congestion and a critical breakdown in traffic operations. And we'll also mention this later as well in the presentation. In general, the way we describe traffic operations is often broken down or summarized as a general level of service, which is an overall view of many measures of traffic operations that people experience, including speed or delay, and is broken down in your typical grade school scale of a level service A being the best, level service F being the worst. Here, in this case, level service D, however, is considered acceptable. So your acceptable range is generally level service A through D, and level service E and F are generally considered operationally deficient locations. Throughout the study area, as we mentioned earlier, we analyzed 65 local intersections. Under 2017 conditions, we identified 8 of these locations as operationally deficient. Under 2045 estimated future conditions, we have forecasted more than double of these locations. 17 are expected to be operationally deficient. And this graphic denotes the critical locations we identified as part of our highway analysis. And I'm going to focus on the bottom right-hand corner. As we mentioned in that model simulation, the I-84 eastbound weave segment between the Route 8 northbound on-ramp and exit 21 and 22 off-ramps. This one, you can obviously experience the delays at this area today, but under future conditions, this becomes a critical capacity constraint. And what this does is it not only blocks traffic from Route 8 northbound from entering the I-84 traffic stream under future conditions, but it actually creates an expanded spillback effect all the way to Chase Parkway, where traffic is expected to queue and experience significant congestion all through the study area. At this point, we'll move on to the safety discussion. Crash data was collected for the initial study based on a period of 3-year data between January 1st, 2015 to December 31st, 2017. And it's important to note that this is the most recent data available based on the fact that various construction projects, including the widening project to the east, as well as the rehabilitation of the Mixmaster Interchange, which began 2018, 2019, does not allow us to get any more relevant recent information beyond this period at the moment. Relative to the local intersections, we've identified 36 of the intersections shown on this map with a dark maroon circle as being high crash intersections. Notable high crash corridors include West Main Street, Washington Street. We've noted in our analysis several vulnerable user crashes, such as crashes involving bicycles or pedestrians, generally located in the downtown or Brass Mills Mall area. The next slide shows the highway crash density, and you might experience this, and it often is goes hand in hand with the highway operations that you experience as well. The more congestion you have, typically you're going to have a higher crash density. And this is exhibited along I-84 eastbound in that critical weave section between the Route 8 northbound on-ramp and the exit 21, 22 off-ramp. But here you can see the crash density extends all the way past the collector distributor road on towards the widening highway to the east that occurred. In the westbound direction, you can see the crash density is sustained throughout the corridor, the central interchange area, beginning with the Union Street area, ending all the way over at the I-84 westbound interchange 18, off-ramp at West Main Street and Highland Avenue. Here you can see several contributing factors we've identified as related to the freeway crashes. We've broken this down into I-84 columns, Route 8 columns, as well as the interchange ramps. Along I-84, you can see the main characteristic or contributing factor in the crash data we observed was the traffic congestion, especially in the eastbound directions. We noted 80% of crashes have congestion as a contributing factor. In the westbound direction, we have 60%, which includes traffic congestion as a contributing factor. And those are very, very high percentages. On Route 8 northbound, you'll see a slight shift, although in the northbound direction, you still have 56% of crashes, which show congestion as a contributing factor. There is a slight shift towards driver behavior in both of these conditions, whereas in the southbound direction, you can see that driver behavior actually exceeds congestion as a contributing factor. The interchange ramps show approximately 50% of crashes are actually related to geometry in this case, and that is a very large increase over the contributing factors noted along the expressways. At this point, I'll pass it on back to Naomi.
Thank you, Dave. So right now we're going to take a second to get your input. So I will bring up a quick poll for you all to take very quickly. We'll stop here to just get an idea of how our analysis for the structural, traffic, and geometric just compares with your lived experience. Do you mostly agree? Is there anything that stands out to you that doesn't really quite make sense? I'll just give us a couple of seconds to get that feedback from you all. And if there are any questions, feel free to put it in the chat. And if there's anything you'd like for us to discuss a little bit more, we'll take a few minutes to talk about that as well. Oh, this is good. We're getting really great feedback from you all. It's looking like most of you either agree, moderately agree, or are fairly neutral with the information that was provided. Feel free to ask any questions if you have any, or if not, well, I'll just move on to the next section. I'll give another minute or two to finish this poll. There's a few people who did not participate.
Hello, Martin Spring, Waterville.
Martin.
Hey, listen, thank you for your indulgence. It's, you know, I feel like a guy in a cave without a flashlight because I have no Zoom.
Yes.
I can't do Zoom on my computer with all due respect. I mean, it's just kind of antiquated computer right now, so I'm doing what I can. So it was a real good presentation by everybody, and so I just think I commend all you guys for your valid efforts, and I'm honored being a resident of Waterbury, Connecticut here to be a part of this session.
Thank you, Martin. There is a few more. There are a few more slides to go through, and I did send a PDF of the presentation. So if you have that in your email, feel more than welcome to open that up and try to follow along with that, so that you can still, you know, access this information along with the rest of us.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Naomi, I have a question.
Yep.
Does the future traffic congestion depend solely on conditions remaining the same, or does it consider, you know, perhaps more public transportation, improvements to the system, improvements to the ancillary roads? In other words, it looks like it will not be able to handle conditions remain the same, but hopefully other things improve between now and 2045.
I will start off answering this question, and feel free, any of my colleagues, to add on any more. The future conditions do take into consideration all of the programmed projects that are in our transportation improvement program, and are so there are projects that have been included in our future analysis, but there probably are some multimodal, or like you're talking about, that public transportation that could consider less people using the transportation or highway system if they have access to, you know, the train or bus or other other options that are similar like that.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I just hopefully those things are being considered as well.
Yes.
Beyond this project, right? I mean,
Right.
obviously we can't, or you guys can't control all of that, but it's a disaster. So, and you know,
Yeah.
that, but thank you.
Yeah, we're definitely taking, you know, all transit into consideration, and looking at the plans that are ongoing in the Waterbury area and within the region as well. And if any of my colleagues want to chime in, feel free at all. We can speak better to it. Okay, all right, great. So I'm going to actually move on to the next section. And in the next section, we will be going through those multimodal conditions, discussing bike, ped, rail, and transit, and what's going on in that area. I'll give that to Katie.
Great, thanks, Naomi. Exactly. So next slide, we'll look at, please. Next. So the bicycle and pedestrian conditions. So you're all very familiar with this. The interchange divides Waterbury into quadrants. Bicycles and pedestrians need to traverse over or under the interchange to connect to different neighborhoods or to the CBD. Some indicative photos here showing, you know, fairly standard bicycle and pedestrian conditions throughout the interchange. And they really tend to discourage pedestrians and bicyclists as currently built. And it really just reflects how mobility is like very supported for the automobile driver and a little more limited for those without access to a personal auto or without the ability to drive. The routes, some of the concerns would be from a bike ped perspective is the routes aren't American with Disabilities Act compliant, you know, also known as ADA compliance. And that's due to conditions such as narrow passageways, lacking crosswalks, lacking curb ramps. Also, like the underpasses, when having to cross under, the underpasses are very dark, so that could be very uncomfortable for someone walking or biking. And the routes lack visual cues, such as the crosswalks, crossing signals, clear striping, or things such as bike lanes. And those visual cues and amenities are twofold importance because it serves to alert drivers to be on the lookout for bicycles and pedestrians, and just kind of gives them that heads up that, you know, someone could be traveling via one of those modes. And it also informs pedestrians that they're welcome to use this route, and it is a route for them. Next slide. So connectors and destinations. So this is something we've been looking at as part of our early study. And we really want to understand how people move around the interchange now and consider key generators that could shape movement in the future. So we would like to enhance existing connections, create new ones where appropriate. So you can see in dark orange dashed lines, those are routes that we see today are currently a little more frequented by bicyclists or pedestrians, but they could be improved a little bit more in terms of comfort and amenities, things like ADA accessibility, bike lanes, streetscaping, you know, plantings, furnishings, etc. And then the solid orange lines that are a little lighter in color, those are routes that could really serve an important function connecting various neighborhoods to one another, but really not frequented as much right now due to that difficulty of crossing under that interchange or through that interchange. And similar to the dark orange option, so those routes as part of this project could be improved, incorporate ADA, bike demand if there's bike lanes, streetscape amenities, etc. We're also looking at transit and rail service conditions. And while, this project is not, focused on developing transit or rail service, what we want to make sure is that we're looking at where those existing services are, where are the bus routes, where are the bus stops, where is the rail station, and consider how we can facilitate safe routes and linkages to transit through this project. So now, next slide, we'll look at some of the environmental and community conditions that we've been looking at as part of this early study. So, we find it really useful to look at the evolution of development in Waterbury and to frame just how we got to where we are today. So you could see in this 1890s map and really how you could see an overarching one city kind of feel to it. The major heart of the city is nestled between the Naugatuck and Mad Rivers. You see the brass manufacturing sites highlighted in the blue circles. And really, you could see extensive connectivity. You already see West Main Street, South Main Street connecting people up to the town green, bridges crossing over the Naugatuck, so folks from the west or the east could get back and forth over that river. In the next slide, we see the 40s and 50s, and we can see that as industry hit its peak with World War II, these 3 industrial areas really increased in size and start to kind of show barriers forming between neighborhoods, especially with the large rail and the freight yard to the west near that top left circle that really does begin to segment the city. And then by the end of the 1950s, manufacturing then started declining after the war. So that leads us to today. The 60s through today. And in the late 50s, early 60s, and throughout the 70s and 80s, highway development was progress. It was a really positive, exciting thing leading us into the future. And it was supported, around the country as part of the Federal Highway Act. And it was, it was an exciting time. And at that local level, developing this interchange over those decades really served to complete that permanent and continuous barrier between neighborhoods that we had started to see with those enlarged industrial areas. And this really, what that meant is loss of connectivity, reliance on personal automobiles became very important, which led to larger lot development as we needed parking lots. And then the parking lots continue to make walking a little less accessible option. So, and that cycle has continues to lead to more recurring vehicular congestion. The next slide. So just some more background on what we've been doing. We have been looking at the environmental and community conditions, undertaking geographic information system research, or GIS, as some of you may know, familiarizing ourselves with previous state and regional engineering studies, making sure we're not reinventing the wheel, but using the information that's also out there. And of course, we really wanted to study all the local planning initiatives that have gone on. So we'll look at that a little bit more. So example here, so what we've done is look through many of these great planning initiatives that have been done in this region, and we mapping some of those visions so we can understand how this construction could be utilized as an opportunity to implement some of the visions of these past planning studies. So we noted some aspects here on this map, mapping the Waterbury Plan of Conservation and Development, which discussed things such as downtown gateways, connectivity, and pedestrian improvements. So we wanted to kind of know where those fall, how that might align with the reconstruction. Looking at the water project and some visions that were part of that, like the Library Front River Connector tells us that, the vision is to connect to the waterfront a little bit better. Or a lot better, and things such as the Waterbury Downtown Strategic Plan and West Main Street corridor studies, pedestrian improvements as part of those, transit connectivity, bike lanes, and how can those things overlap with our job or our project. In the next slide, we looked at, like I said earlier, the GIS mapping. Naomi talked about this a little bit more as part of the Needs and Deficiencies report. We looked at various conditions through GIS mapping, land use, socioeconomics, environmental justice, trying to understand where these communities are, what are the key community resources, the hospitals, St. Mary's and Waterbury Hospital, cultural resources like the Matatuck Museum, educational resources, we have UConn, there's a lot of secondary schools as well, and Naugatuck Valley Community College. And then also parks, water bodies, mapping those and other ecological features that Naomi is going to talk a little bit more about now.
Right, and here I just wanted to highlight these natural and environmental conditions on your screen. You see here in purple and orange, the FEMA floodplain map, and also in this blue color, you can see the Naugatuck River and the Mad River as we see it today, and other rivers and streams throughout the program area. Okay, at this time, we'll stop again to get your input on our multimodal community environmental analysis. Just want to get a gauge to see how you all feel that we, highlighted those existing conditions in the Waterbury area. The poll should be live now. Did anything in our community environmental contextual analysis stand out to you? Are there any general questions? Are there any features, positive or negative, that define Waterbury to you? Feel free to insert, any info you have into the chat, or any questions you have into the chat as well. And also give us some time to have a little bit of a discussion right now too. I see a good amount of response so far. I do see a couple of moderately disagrees. So for those of you who have selected that, if you want to, maybe speak up and maybe discuss with that what maybe we missed in our current analysis where we could improve on, just to give us a better idea of what we're really not touching upon that you would like for us to touch upon. Okay, I do have one question in the chat. That's from Mark Nielsen of NVCOG. His question is, any thoughts of reusing the temporary bridge for bike and PED corridor?
Yeah, not red, PED.
Yeah, PED, yeah, so pedestrian.
Yeah, the comment basically refers to, when they built the sort of for Route 8 North, the workaround while they're doing some of the work on that side. Again, they built a nice bridge that carries traffic over it, and it seems like it might present an opportunity to, become part of the greenway that the city is considering, through there. Mm-hmm. Given it's where it is, it may be hard to keep it in place because of any future work going on the interchange. But I would just think you should give us some serious thought of retaining that.
Absolutely. I can speak to that a little bit, and I know that temporary structure is part of the ongoing rehab project. And I don't know the specifics surrounding how it was constructed, but I do know that it was constructed to be temporary, which means that it should be, removed once we are finished utilizing it. The Naugatuck River is right there, so there is, that floodplain concern in that area.
And I guess that's the thing. I mean, if it's temporary, if they were able to put it in without sort of going through the full environmental assessments of its impact, that might be one thing. But again, I think it's worth a discussion.
Yeah, so Mark, if I could jump in here for a second. So that bridge was intended to be temporary. David Schweitzer, maybe you can help me out here too with the alignment, but that bridge was always permitted as temporary. So, the intent was always that it was going to come out at the end of the rehab project.
Right, I understand that. But so again, is it temporary because of environmental concerns? It was put in there.
Yeah, that's
understanding that it would. Okay.
That's
Yes,
part
Mark,
of it.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
go ahead, Dave.
It was definitely for environmental reasons due to
Okay.
the elevations. We could only raise the bridge high enough to meet a 25-year storm. We couldn't meet the 100-year
Okay.
floodplain limit. So it had to become a temporary bridge.
Okay.
Originally, it was going to be a temporary, truss bridge similar to the one further downstream there that originally comes off of Route 8 northbound.
Mhm.
Due to the super elevation fluctuation going across that bridge, what that means is, seeing we're curving to the left, we have to bank up to the left, and then as we turn back to get into the footprint of Riverside Street, we had to bank back in the other direction. So the
Mhm.
bridge actually transitions its cross slope. You see, people were worried we weren't going to get into talking about these geometric criteria within this discussion. But that was the reason this bridge had to be stick built, meaning it was constructed with, a separate substructure and then the
Right.
superstructure and then the deck. So,
Yeah.
but it was only designed to meet a 25-year flood, and it will be coming out this winter. It'll be being removed.
Yeah, because and again, the thought or because again, if you look at the footprint of the interchange, it really divides the city into 4 quadrants, and there really isn't a lot of connections between those neighborhoods. And just looking at it from a high level, you say, oh, gee, this could create sort of a biped spine that could sort of start eliminating some of those barriers that were created. But again, I understand the how it was built and some of the sort of the temporary conditions that were accepted for the environmental. So, but again, it's just going forward, it's something to think about.
No, definitely, Mark, and that's something that we did discover during our analysis and looking at, is that there is a lack of connectivity, and that it hampered detour routes during the rehab. So really looking at other ways we can connect that local level is something we really want to get into these alternatives, and that's something we're really looking for more of this group to help us with also, is, hey, where else can we make these connections? So
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you for the question.
All right, no, thanks for the answer. Thanks.
Thank you. And then we have one more question here from Eric Hazelton from the Housatonic Valley Association. Eric asked, are there any stormwater analysis included in the environmental section? And I'll answer this. So the analysis needs and deficiency report identifies the existing conditions for the environment. So nothing really specific or data calculations for the stormwater has been done for the future of the mixed master interchange. When we get more into designing and figure out those conceptual alternatives of the stormwater, we'll get more into that detail. But right now, we just documented what's currently out there for the environmental section.
Naomi?
Yes.
This is Kevin Zach, the Naugatuck River Revival Group. To follow up on Eric's question, was there anything, and also leading back to Chris Fagan's presentation about structural conditions and overviews, why wasn't there any temporary trash or oil excluders included in the early part of the project? And do you include environmental pollutants entering the waterways as part of your 62 studied bridges during the data collection phase? And temporarily, as you're working on the bridges now on the Mixmaster, so it seems to me logically, at a very low cost or expense, you could put stops in there right now, and that would lead to permanent trash and oil excluders. So in essence, that project is one huge direct pollutant, non-point source polluting right into the Naugatuck River. It's a source. I just don't hear any talk about either, as you're working on it, trying to minimize. I mean, you guys, as they're working on it, drop things in the river. I found them, whether it's a cone or items from time to time. You just don't go down into the river and extract them. I understand that it's part of doing work and business. But you know, anyway.
Yeah,
so.
no, Kevin, I appreciate that. So the ongoing rehab project that is separate from our new mix program project. So there's a little bit of a separation there where what we're looking at to do now is we're looking into the future of what we can do in the future. And we haven't quite gotten there yet with designing those traffic or trash receptacles that you are discussing, but those will definitely be taken into consideration as we move forward and finding a solution on how we can improve our environmental conditions in any way possible and in feasible ways for the new mix program. But we appreciate your comments on the ongoing rehab project. I'm not quite sure if there's anything we can do there quite yet, but that is a separate project from what we are discussing today.
One follow-up on this discussion is, will this group be able to get a presentation about some of the ongoing things happening with like some of that phase of this where there's stuff that's happened and there's things that are ongoing, and so far a lot of this has been focused on, you know, a few decades from now. I'm just curious if we'll be able to provide feedback on some of the current things happening.
Yes and no. The current things that are happening that are ongoing now, I'm sure there's a project website that you can access in order to put in your comments, and they'll be looking at that. And
I was just going to say, Naomi, maybe what you can do is, Eric, if it helps, we can provide you with the links to the other projects website.
Yeah.
You know, this, as we had indicated back in the stakeholder meetings, you may remember, you know, there are some other projects that are going on that are obviously related, you know, by proximity or, you know, common interest to the job that we're working on now. But this project is primarily focused on the upcoming and future replacement of the mixed master interchange. So while we are considering the things that are being done, you know, like the rehab job, obviously, as Chris pointed out, to buy its time to get a replacement program in place. You know, we're not necessarily looking to focus on those at these meetings. You know, it's a separate project, it's a separate entity that's going on at the same time, right? So we can certainly steer you to that information. We can obviously get you other information on it, you know, but it's not the primary focus of this project.
Has the window closed for any of our input about current environmental pollutants going into the river during this project?
For the rehab job?
Yes.
Well, the rehab job is wrapping up. You know, it's almost done. So, I mean, if you're noticing things, you can certainly bring it to the attention of the district 4 construction office. You know, we can put you in contact with the
pipes that go from the storm drains from the project to go directly into the river.
Right.
Correct.
Well, I mean, again, there's things that were permitted for that job that were allowed on certain, you know, conditions.
Okay. So.
All right. So, you know, this team had really, I mean, well, I shouldn't say everybody, but the majority of this team had nothing to do with that job. Right. So.
All right.
But David Schweitzer might be able to speak better to that. But, you know, again, I don't want to tie up this meeting and everybody's time for the rehab project.
Yeah, Kevin, we can have this, you know, you can contact me directly and we can have this conversation offline if you would like. I'd love to discuss this further with you.
All right. Thank you.
Great. Were there any other questions or comments?
Naomi, if I can, I'm sorry to harp on my one issue, but I was a little disappointed that we didn't hear anything about Riverside Cemetery in the environmental analysis. We are a 36-acre urban forest right in the center of the city. We are a museum of art and history that many people don't even know exist in Waterbury. We are a great asset to the community. We are on the National Register of Historic Places. People see us driving by Route 8 and say, I've driven by that on Route 8 and always wondered what was in there, but no one can find us. And again, this is no one's fault on this project. I understand that. But I'm hoping that in the design phase that we consider moving Route 8 to the east side of the river. And I know that's possible because the Route 8 North bypass was put over there and for the rehab project. And so there is space available away from our site. We are literally in the shadow of the interchange. Right. The service ramps from 84 east to Route 8 south literally cut the corner of our property. And it's again, I said this last time, it's loud and it's ugly and it keeps us cut off from the entire greater Waterbury area. So I just wanted to throw that out. I'm hoping that we are considered as part of that environmental analysis.
Yes, absolutely. The Riverside Cemetery has been included on notable, places in Waterbury. Unfortunately, we couldn't go through all of our environmental analysis, but when you go through our report, you will definitely see Riverside Cemetery on the map. And even on that map that we have from the 1890s, you were there. Yes, yeah. You were there. So we do know and identify Riverside Cemetery as, a historic property within Waterbury. So we're definitely taking notice, and you'll definitely be included as we, continue on in our study and on to the next steps. I know a lot of you all are really eager to see, some of these conceptual items that we're looking at. Within the next upcoming meetings, we'll be able to get more into that criteria, and you'll be able to see, some of the options conceptual options that we are that we hope to plan and look at in the future as this PEL study progresses. So right now we're just bringing you all up to speed. So once we get there, we can all, hit the ground running with your input and feedback on what we have, hopefully to plan in the future and make a decision with CONDOT.
Well, thank you. I just felt the need to say that. So thank you for your response. I appreciate that.
Okay, and we'll move on right now into our next steps. So this is a familiar figure. This is the PEL study next steps. As I mentioned before, we're right here dead center in this develop the purpose, the need, and goals and objectives for the New Mix PEL study. Today we reviewed those existing conditions and some of the anticipated future conditions, identifying, where those needs and deficiencies are that are out there. We've also identified those key community environmental features that are important to Waterbury and the surrounding area and region. What are we going to do with that information? What we will do is the program team will identify those needs, we'll identify those deficiencies, we'll identify those goals and objectives. We'll take your the PAC members and stakeholder input. We'll put that all into a little funnel and develop this preliminary purpose and needs statement. I'll provide more information as we move forward on what that is. Here's a quick look ahead, upcoming meetings and future PAC agenda items. We do have a January workshop on the calendar. I'm going to send out after this meeting an email that will be similar to the email that I sent before, that will have that doodle poll in order to schedule that meeting. This workshop will be where the program team will present to you that preliminary purpose and needs statement, and we'll finalize that statement then, and also finalize those other transportation related goals and objectives, and get your input on that. And then looking even further ahead in February, we're looking at presenting those conceptual alternatives and the level 1 evaluation criteria, and also get your input on that. So just to put it on your mind before the next meeting, we ask that you review that preliminary purpose and need statement. In the new year, I will send out an email with that draft preliminary purpose and need statement. We're still, receiving input. We're still, workshopping and tweaking this purpose and need statement so that in January, we'll be able to review it all together. We also want you to continue to identify those other transportation-related goals and objectives on that input tracking map. You guys have been doing a fabulous job in putting those comments on it. Please continue to go back to your communities and identify those, opportunities or comments that you have within the study area that are transportation related. And we'll go through that during our work group in January. Also, please continue to explore the program website. Please continue to check your email for information on the NUMICS PAC and any future scheduling. And also, we hope that you remain excited to participate in our next meeting. And we'll end it here. And I'll ask if there's any remaining questions and comments, we can stop here and take some time to go through that with you all. If there's any final.
I don't know if I'm still here, but Martin Spring, Waterville, here in Waterbury. I just want to wish everybody a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And I hope and pray to God things are going to get better in 2022 for each and every one of us. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, hearing no comments or questions, I'm going to end our slideshow a little early here. I want to thank you all again for joining us for this second PAC meeting. Please be on the lookout for a subsequent email with some more information on the topics that we went through today. I'll give you that link to the Analysis Needs and Deficiency report. And I hope you all have a great rest of your week. And if you don't hear from me, happy holidays and Happy New Year. I'll talk to you next year. Thank you. Oh.